I would like to take the time to yap just a little bit in order to highlight 6 decks that I think we are all trying to find a way to get to the end of the expansion, to get our way to new cards. And so I'm going to try and pick 6 decks and highlight them for you that I have found fun, enjoyable, and somewhat competitive going into the very end of the expansion, so that you have something to play in Wild in case you, like me, are finding that you're just having trouble getting over the line. So hopefully you've tried these, but if you haven't tried them before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the deck itself. I don't have time or the ability tonight to play sample games of the deck, but for most of these I have already made a video or edited a game, so you can go check out their gameplay there, and that will be linked in the description to this video. So the first deck in question that I have enjoyed is this Reno Rogue list. I'm going to be going in order of most cope to least amount of cope. So if you're talking about most least competitive to most competitive, as much as I don't want to like this deck, I kept winning with it, and I found that it was fairly competitive. Mulligan was basically look for an early treasure distributor or Jolly Roger, with a good pirate opener, and kind of go from there. The way the deck ends up playing out is there's a lot of sort of mid to late game mana cheat with Sandbox Scoundrel, and if you can pair that up with Bran, you can do silly things like an early Shadowcaster Scabs, or an early Reno Lone Ranger, or an early Unkiliax, and that can kind of clear out the game. That's also, ignoring the fact that we do run bounce effects that we can use on powerful cards like Zephyrus the Great, or Astalor, or the late stages of Astalor, where you can kind of set up some funny lethals with a Bran Bronzebeard into some kind of mana-cheated third stage Astalor for lethal. I want to dislike this deck, but I really enjoy it. It's a pile of cards that I mostly got from Third Impact, a user in Corb, or Discorb, however you want to say that. The one change I did make was I cut out his Excavate package and added in, again, Timeline Accelerator and Unkiliax. I think some minor survivability stuff, just so that, this does a little bit better into aggro. It's fine. It plays yellow cards. It can beat aggro. It can beat control and value stuff by just sort of doing these value bombs. And I don't know. This deck's a lot of fun. If you have the cards for it, I wouldn't craft anything here now at the end of the expansion, because it's just not going to be worth it. You don't know what's going to be viable in the next, expansion. But if you haven't tried it yet and you have the cards for it, I would try it. It's a lot of fun. The second deck I would consider crafting and trying if you haven't done so, or I guess if you have the cards, throw it together and see if you have the cards, is KVL Tree Druid, aka Treant Druid. This is the list that I played last month with a pretty good amount of success into on a free-to-play account. The deck is insanely cheap. It's only about 2,040 dust, if memory serves, because some of these, like I think it was Innervate, it's like Core or something like that. So this is an insanely cheap deck. Very explosive gameplay. The high rolls are very high, but the problem with this deck is it does lose to a single board clear. So if you love playing like Miracle Rogue, CopperScum calls this Brown Miracle Rogue. If you enjoy playing Miracle Rogue, or if you enjoy playing APM decks, you're basically stalling. You're looking for one of the big draw spells, an Overgrown Beanstalk. I tried keeping Fungal Fortunes. It was fine. Aeroponics. And turn 3 really popping off and trying to make as wide a board as possible. Get down an early Cultivation, turn 4, turn 5, and kind of go from there. A lot of people are cutting the Moonlit Guidances for Mark of the Lotus, or trying stuff with Ziliax, or trying stuff with Floop. Weirdly enough, because Floop plus Owl gets you a cheap 3/4 along with a 4/4, that's fine. That's fine. You're probably cutting Fungal Fortunes if you're doing that as well. This is the 30 that I like to play, so this is the 30 I'm going to showcase. I really have liked the Moonlets getting more Cultivations or getting more Umbral Owls or getting more Blood Treants, so I haven't cut them yet. The third deck I'd like to highlight, DocDelight put out an all points bulletin for, hey, anybody want to play a friendly? I played a friendly against him, and he tuned me up with this. It's like Murloc Shaman, but it's like Shutter Shaman. It's like Shutter Murloc Shaman. It's a weird deck, but I've been tuned up by something similar to it in the past. The Murloc Growfin is not only a great play on 1, but it makes an 8/8 with Gigantify with the same exact effect in your hand. If you can combine that with Scargill, you're talking about a 1 mana 16/16 attack. The deck also sports board clears in obviously Flurgle Tox, which works great against Miracle Rogues. Clownfish is your classic mana cheat. Gorlock Ravager to go get all the Murlocs that you want. Everything is awesome to buff your board. Mutanus for a little bit of disruption. And of course, what you can do is then you can throw down your Shutterwalk, and he's now copying the Growfin's battle cries, and he's eating stuff out of the opponent's hand, and hopefully you've got a Boom Pistol Bully to lock out Reno. That makes things a lot of fun. Actually, the game that I played of this that I chose to highlight for YouTube, my Shutterwalk actually died. And so what I started doing was the last battle cry I had played was Shutterwalk, and so I started chaining together macaws and just repeating until I had a board state that my opponent could no longer handle. So you got some options with this. I think it's a decent deck. I think it's probably better than Treant Druid. It's probably a little bit less high risk, high reward than the Treant Druid. It's probably a little bit more consistent, so I would place this a little bit less cope than, let's say, the Treant Druid. Okay? The next least amount of cope deck is Copper's Waker Mage. I've watched him play a fair amount of this. He's a master who has ground through infinite reps with this. I am a drooling novice who does the best I can. I did have a funny game with it where I beat another Quest Mage through block by going in early, but essentially your mulligan is Open the Waygate, Sorcerer Apprentice. It's hard to justify anything outside of that unless you know for a fact the person that you are going to play against is an aggro deck. If it's an aggro deck, keeping First Flames, keeping Siphon Mana alongside the First Flames, keeping the Flame Waker, and actually not playing the quest on 1. Like, if you know it's aggro, keeping Open the Waygate, First Flame, let's say you're on the coin, Siphon Mana, Waker, siphoning mana, a 2 health pirate, and then swinging back with a 0 mana quest, 0 mana First Flames, and obviously Flame Waker before that, can flip a board and flip your fortunes. Other than that, I've seen the deck kill as early as turn 3 with the coin, which is kind of goofy. I think the deck is real enough that it's fun to play. I've seen him play it up into the top 300s on EU. He's saying now that it's a little bit harder to do because for whatever reason, EU is getting very anti-combo. So there's a lot of neophytes, there's a lot of watch posts. This deck is very fragile to disruption, but I think it's a glass cannon. Like when it works, it really works, especially if you can play it efficiently, and I find it's a lot of fun. I've seen a version of this run, I want to say instead of Infinitize the Magnitude, Jaina's Gift, and maybe instead of Evocation, Jaina's Gift, but I'd have to double check and see what the cuts were. Okay. My fifth deck, which I know works for a fact, I brought to Legend this month with a record of 26-11. It's good old-fashioned Odyn Warrior, and you might say to yourself, well, Schmoopy, do you have to wait till turn 9 to put Odyn down? Most games, yes. If you don't get him off from the depths, which sometimes you do, which means that on the coin, you could possibly coin him out. for a total of 6 mana. But on the games that doesn't work, in the slow games, I'm usually fizzling Odyn. As soon as I have Fizzle and Odyn in the same hand, I'm going to fizzle it away. Poof! And away it goes. But most of the time, this is a control deck. You are looking to have big, risky skipper turns. You're going to be Buckler Shield Shattering, and I'll be honest with you, my mulligan into what I assume is aggro is always Buckler Shield Shatter. If I think that it's the possibility of a Miracle Rogue, I will also keep Blade Storm, because that's very good early against Miracle Rogues. I'll also keep Barov, because that's very good against Miracle Rogues. Keeping Ankar doesn't suck, because that gets your hands on your risky skippers. And then you do your funny risky skipper turns. What's cool about this deck is it doesn't need... you can sell out a lot of pieces in order to not only armor up, but then eventually go face and find lethal later. The more reps you have with this deck, I found it being very, very, very rewarding to figure out how many of your pieces you could actually sacrifice and still have lethal damage. I really like this list right now. The one card I have that I think is flex is the Roaring Applause. I don't have anything better to stick there. I've tried things in the past like Alkali of Pain. Haven't loved that. Roaring Applause is kind of the best of the not great set of cards. I've played Voon in this slot before. I think Voon doesn't suck. Something cheap, something that gets you more value, or something that adds more card draw would be something I would look for if you want to do a second From the Depths. Sure, but I find that unless you're going to From the Depths in Finley, you're not really getting value for your From the Depths. It's not really worth. So having only one, I've never missed a second one. Second Aftershocks, sure, it is worse now in its nerfed state, but if you really want to make sure that you nail down your anti-aggro options, 3 is a great break point in a lot of pirate decks. It takes care of a lot of pirates and shadow priests. Up to you. But I know the Dialog Hunts. I know this deck works. You will not find this on a tier list. If you, again, late expansion, don't craft it if you don't have pieces for it. But if you have the pieces for it and you want to play it, check it out. It's a lot of fun. Last but not least, I just noticed today that Tempo Storm finally put this as tier 2 on their list. I've been hearing whispers about this deck for a little over a month now, as far as this deck being sneaky good, having tier 1 stats, but a very, very, very low sample size. So basically ever since Marin the Manager came out. Think of Dragon Druid as like Reno Druid, but without the yellow cards. So you still have the ramp options. We can still play Splish Splash Whelp in Wild, Invigorate, Breath of Dreams, but you have doubles of all those ramp pieces. We have obviously dropped gifts because we don't need gifts for this particular list. And you're trying to basically do, Bran, Astalor, Aviana stuff and blow your opponent away. But you still have Unkiliax. We have the funny Ysera the Dreamer, so we can drop her down. Her bounce effect now can target herself, so if you find yourself with only 2 cards in hand and one of them is Ysera the Dreamer, you can essentially Ysera Man's Hand yourself over and over and over again and bounce her as much as needed to lock the opponent out. There's 2 differences from the Tempo Storm list from my list, and that is on stream I cut the Ferocious Howls, which was found in the Tempo Storm list, and I put in Mutanus the Devourer and Theotar the Mad Duke. I feel like in this meta, especially against other slow decks, having a little bit of hand disruption is important, especially because we play Bran Bronzebeard, especially because we play Flibonius Floop, Floopsy Floop, I don't know, one of those. Only running these 2 cards, really you can get in 4, 5, 6 points of disruption. So in my mind, it's worthwhile running them, especially since there are some combo decks and it's good to interfere with them, and also into other slow greedy decks. If you can reduce their card advantage, you're Druid. Mana doesn't matter, draw doesn't matter. Basically reducing your opponent's options can help you squeeze out the game. Worth noting as well, alternate win conditions in the ETC, which you can bran. So you can bran ETC, go get Alex Straza, go get Alex Lifebinder, pop, pop. There's a win condition. Maybe you also have Floop in the side, pop, pop. Or if you just want to go the outgreed route, you can do Kazaku-san. I think the weakest card in this list is probably Kazaku-san. The amount of times I find myself wanting to pick this as an option, as a win condition, are very, very, very low. All right. So those are 6 decks that I would consider playing if you're looking to rotate through and have a difference of experience. Just treading water until we get new cards. Again, this until very recently wasn't even on a meta list. This was low down on a meta list. These are all sort of fringy, off-meta, or hipster-type decks. I enjoy all of them. I would co-sign on all of them as far as at least being fairly competitive into a high level of competition. So good luck with those, and let me know in the comments how well they do for you and if you have any fun with them.